I think that's a thing, a particular trait of Colombia, isn't it? There's a perhaps it feeds into this ability, the sort of ability of governments to plan and think at medium and long term is not here. I just wanted to return to your reform, because there's lots of very interesting changes that would come about if this reform were accepted, and I think for Colombian politics and for the democracy, the way that you've described would help the transparency, would help the connection between the voter and the politician. Where are you in the process with the reform, and how hopeful are you that Turkeys never vote for Christmas, and sometimes it seems difficult to see that the politicians, your colleagues in Congress, the senators and the representatives, would vote for a reform that would make their life potentially harder. How hopeful are you of this reform going through? And if so, if you are hopeful, which I presume you are, when do you think it would take place? When do you think it would go through and be accepted as a law?
I actually, it's very hard to say if I'm optimistic or pessimistic. I think this is something we have to do. People in Colombia protest about the political system. We just had a very fine congressman that we met together in a conference that we were discussing, and he described all the problems, okay? But he didn't have a formula, okay? So everyone can, say, this is terrible, and this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible. But once they see my proposal, they say, how would I do into that situation? So we did a simulation of how would with the votes of 2010, how would that work out if we had our system? And we came out that it was very much proportional, so it would, for many of them, would be convenient. But of course, they know how to do their game now. So they are really a big obstacle. And especially because we are create the districts proportional to the number of inhabitants, no? And so he have your overrepresentation of the rural sector and sub-representation of the urban sector, and they vote less. The urban sector votes much less because the inducements of clientelism don't work so well here. So, objectively, there's no possibility of getting implemented. But, for example, many political leaders, even the president, has given say this will be useful. It will solve our problems. Several ex-presidents have said the same thing. And the problem here is we have recently something that I think was like a breakthrough, because we have spent the last 2 years explaining the proposal. And the breakthrough was last week because we had a forum in the parliament, and actually some experts started to make the right questions and say, what is the consequence of this? And see beyond their immediate future, and how would that work out in the long run, or the medium run, to transform that. But it was very funny because I had a discussion with another senator, and in the discussion, he was trying to find out what was my interest in this thing. And when I say, no, this is good for the country, I mean, oh, yeah? So he was completely skeptical about that because he couldn't believe it. So what we're doing, we presented it at the fair. I think we have concentrated on explaining to politicians. The president from the very beginning said, go to the program of the national unity table, and they asked us to make the simulation, but they don't want to hear about it. We haven't been able to explain to the Partido de la U, which is the main party. They had not received us. after 2 years. They say, yes, 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 and next week, that week, whenever we arrive, all of them disappear because they are the main beneficiaries of the systems. Almost that party was built on that, to have access to the state, to milk it. So, okay. But, for example, we just had, today we have a very good news and a very, very fine scholarly newspaper said that in the peace process, this will be fit very well with one of the main chapters of the peace process, because it will give the FARC an instrument to have the possibility of political control, no, but success in certain territories in which they feel they have. And they also will give them the opportunity to build national organizations because of the combination of the two type of tracks of the electoral reform. So you actually have, and we came up to this point in the Senate, and many people there think it's interesting, but they don't want to think very much ahead. So we're going to spend the next 3 months trying to get into other audiences, the private sector, and to explain the proposal to some political leaders, because actually everyone sees that this system is absurd. Everyone says, you know, this is impossible, this is absurd. 2 million votes and 800 million votes not marked is absurd. And there's no representation. Everyone so nobody really actually knows how to solve it. And this is a proposal that we will come to in a moment. And also, you have to see our work as a problem of changing the political culture, which is saying accountability. And in Spanish, you don't have a word for accountability. In Swedish, you don't have a word for clientelism. Susan Stokes, which is a very fine scholar, mentioned that. You know, in Sweden, you have to explain, you know, like a paragraph to explain what is clientelism. In Spanish, you have a paragraph to explain what is accountability. It's absent from the culture.